Electricast. Looking to invest? Start your journey by exploring exchange-traded funds with Global X ETFs. Exchange-traded funds, or ETFs for short, create baskets of stocks, bonds, and other assets that you can buy in a single trade. Global X specializes in ETFs that track emerging trends, like the rise of artificial intelligence, as well as strategies aimed to generate income potential. Visit globalxetfs.com to discover how you can get started.
Immerse yourself in Candy Crush Music Season. Crush the competition for a chance to win 3 epic live music experiences anywhere in the world. Discover the hottest new tracks from Toki Monster, Kimbra, and Lazewo in-game now. Now that sounds sweet. Click or tap the banner to download Candy Crush and play Music Season now. Start September 19th. Open to players 18 older above level 25 in eligible countries. Prize cap value and terms apply.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to our Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie, and today we're talking with Dr. Vanessa Vélez. Dr. Vélez is a holistic and integrative board-certified psychiatrist, psychotherapist, and artist. She graduated from Cornell University, Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine, and Hackensack Meridian Health Psychiatry Residency. And now she's the founder of Soul Psychiatry, a private practice that focuses on integrating mind, body, and soul for deep healing. Her mission is to help young adults and adult professionals struggling with depression, anxiety, trauma, ecological, existential, and spiritual distress find inner peace, combining modalities such as psychotherapy and medications with holistic approaches focusing on spirituality, creativity, and purpose. I'm really excited to get this conversation started. So welcome, Dr. Vélez. It's great having you on the show today.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm excited to be here.
So before we get started, it's tradition for me to start my podcast episodes with having my guests tell us a little bit more about themselves. So please tell us more about Vanessa, the woman, and then we'll segue into what you do.
Yeah, definitely. So I am a daughter, a friend, a sister, a new aunt, and just someone who deeply is wanting and seeking that inner connection to herself and to the world.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, and especially too, like this, I asked you to come on my podcast today because we've talked previously and I wanted there to be like the younger generation to be able to share their journeys. You know, it's great to have someone who's had life experience like myself to be sharing about my journey, but it's also great to have someone in your generation also to be sharing about your journey because it's different. Like for how I grew up is so different now. I didn't grow up with computers necessarily in the beginning with the new technologies in the beginning. Whereas now for the generations behind me, your generation as well, is that you're coming up behind me having these things in place, you know, pretty much in place, ready for you to go. And it's become a part of your story. And so I wanted really to have voices like yours on here to really share about your journey as a young woman and what you experienced in life. So with that being said, I want to really get into what you did because I think it's really interesting. We've, as I said, talked before we got on today. And so I want to ask you, Dr. Vélez, can you describe what led you to blend traditional psychiatric methods with holistic practices in your approach to mental health?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely influenced by my personal and professional training. You know, personally, I've gone through sadness and anxieties and fears and definitely have benefited from my own therapy and traditional modalities. And also that holistic approach is so important. So looking into yoga and meditation or travel, pilgrimages, doing breath work and going into nature, I think has been really important to me. And I think that medications can be certainly life-saving, and sometimes, depending on the severity of the mental illness, they need to be used lifelong. And I also think that in our generation, we often think like, we need this magic bullet or this pill is going to solve everything, but it's just one tool in our toolbox. So it's so important to address the body, the physical health, the mind, our thoughts, our feelings, our relationships to ourselves, to others, to society, to the health of the planet. So really looking at the biopsychosocial spiritual model for that health.
Yeah, I agree with you. And one of the things too is it's this came into my mind as you were talking, the movie The Lion King. One of the things that I remember about that is talking about the circle of life. And I feel like as humans, we all on this planet are contributing to life in some form. And I think our circle of life, especially as humans, encompasses so many different things. And especially now with social media, with access to the internet, it can be really hard. And I'm sure you've had your patients coming to you being influenced by external things that are really like playing havoc on some of their anxieties or some of the challenges that they're going through. And so I think it's really important that we talk about, especially when it comes to having access to the media and especially the way the media reports on things. I think it can be really super scary. So I want to talk about your soul psychiatry approach. So your mission, is to help young adults and adult professionals struggling with depression, anxiety, trauma, ecological, existential, and spiritual distress to find inner peace. So how do you tailor this integrative approach to individual patients, especially those dealing with complex issues like these?
So thank you for bringing up that point about social media and just the human experience, because I often feel like there's such a pressure in society to be happy and to have it all and to have the job and the career and the partner and the car and the house and all of these different things. And so it's very much like a consumerism, competitive culture that we live in, and one that is very easy to curate our social media platforms as we are living our best life. And the truth is that there's a lot of suffering in life, sickness, not having resources, poverty, or just emotional traumas that we've experienced or neglects. And so I think it's really important to normalize the human experience and be like, you know, when we get hurt, we cry. Or some folks, like our male counterparts, they have been sort of conditioned to not to cry and to show this sort of strong self. So I think it's really important just to normalize that human experience. And when I work with patients, I really approach them as a soul, as a being, and I think there's something really beautiful that happens between them and myself, and that's that healing, just being able to listen, to validate, to hear, to feel what they're feeling. And I might not have gone through exactly what they've been through, but I can sort of understand, and that compassion is the bridge to our experiences. So it's really looking at them as a soul, as a spirit, and seeing myself in them and kind of flipping chairs, like flipping positions. Like I could easily be where they are and they could be where I am. And I just think about that connection. So it's a very personalized, individualized sort of approach.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you talk about like, what is that, the dream, right? A lot of the time we're looking externally for what we want for our lives instead of looking internally. I think it really does come to personal choice. But a lot of the time we're influenced by everyone around us. The people in our lives are telling us what we need to be doing. They're telling us what our lives should look like. I come from a generation where it was, the picture was that you went to school, you then either went into college or university or straight out to the workforce. You found a partner, you had children, you created this life. And then at the end of this job that you were to stay at for the entirety of your career, because that's how they looked at it, was then you retired. And from there, that's when life began. That's when you started to enjoy things, having that retirement and going out and having fun. And so it's looking at, especially now with your generation growing up, and now there's so many possibilities that we can actually do more with our lives. We are encouraged to do more with our lives because it's now become so mainstream of people talking about, like, what do you want for your life? What is your dream? What are your goals? Setting those personal goals, actually dreaming big and going after those goals. So I really feel like that is so important to note, because I'm sure you've probably had people come into your facility, whether they've come in person, or I know that you do also the telehealth process as well. How have you found when you are, especially when you're working with someone who actually is not only having these challenges of whether it's depression, anxiety, some form of trauma, whether that's an external something ecological that happened. Some people have this experience that's not anything of their doing. It's not even like something personal, but they experience it, or even spiritually. How do you, as an example, how do you approach your clients that way when it comes to like making choices for themselves, like what their dream is? Because I think, again, like I said, a lot of people try to tell us what our dream is, or they're telling us what we should be doing and the things that we should be doing, how we should live, things that we should go after, the goals that we should pursue. How do you approach that?
Yeah, so I definitely think there's a lot more choice now than before. Women in particular were able to choose, like, do you want children? Do we not want children? And that's been sort of this pressure to be a mother. So I think there's the beauty of really having choice, which is really beautiful. And there still is that external pressure. So I really help people see, well, what is it that you want? And what are the pros, the cons of doing it, not doing it, and kind of teasing apart, like, is this your idea? Is this something that you've gotten from, your parents or society as at large? And I often think about the faceless masses that have that external pressure on us. And then we internalize those messages of the shoulds. And when we should on ourselves, we really have that shame and that internalized messaging of like, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. So really addressing those core beliefs and where did we get them from? And it's usually from childhood or the media telling us we need this new handbag or a new perfume or something to feel whole and complete. So I really think addressing that hole in the soul is really important, because we often use external things to either try to fill ourselves, to numb out, to dissociate, to escape. And it's really easy to distract ourselves from our feelings. And often we weren't taught how to feel feelings. We only were taught to be happy and to be smiling and cheerful. But when it comes to feeling maybe sad or upset or frustrated or angry, we weren't taught to give ourselves that space. And so I think it's really important to connect back into the body, because the mind, spins and spins, and that's where like the anxiety often lives. And then we come down to our bodies and to our heart spaces, and it's like, actually, what do I want for myself? And often, I'll have patients ask that, like, imagining themselves with scenario A, and then how does your body feel? And the body gives so many beautiful messages. If it's feeling more calm and less tense, that's a signal that maybe scenario A is aligned with my heart, with my soul, with my purpose. And then what does scenario B feel like? Maybe there's a tightness. Maybe there's a tension in our neck, our upper back. Maybe there's like this pit in our stomach, or it's hard to breathe. Maybe that's giving us a signal to, again, what is aligned, what is not aligned. And so I think it's about addressing those core beliefs of unworthiness, of not good enough, and then coming back to the body and using that as our information, and then addressing the things that we use to distract ourselves from feeling. And in our society, we have our phones to distract ourselves, or, sometimes it could be substances or sugar or gambling. So looking at all of those behaviors is really important. What is it trying to serve us or help us with? How are we using it, and what are the consequences?
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. I think it's so important to pay attention, especially to our body, because our body will tell us if we don't like something, if we don't feel good about it, we're going to have that visceral response to it. And I think a lot of the time people are afraid to actually say, well, to say no, like, I don't like this, or I don't want to do this, or this is not for me, because maybe they've just their whole lives been told this is what you should be doing. Again, the shoulds, the must-haves, all of those things. So I really am glad that you brought that up. So I want to talk about your artistic influence. How does your background as an artist influence your therapeutic approach? And what role do you believe creativity plays in mental health?
Yeah, so as an artist, I started, I guess, in middle school, just in my art class. And because of academics, I sort of got away from artwork. And then it was after college, I had a little bit more head and heart space to just draw. And I found like it was such a therapeutic outlet for me, where I got to just express and just be. And my initial sort of artwork was drawing portraits, so it felt very heady. I had to pay attention to a lot of detail. And then afterwards, it turned more into abstract, where, you can color outside the lines and you can just free associate. And yeah, so it's been a huge release for me, especially in medical school, just drawing and painting and using my body to move color. And so I really try to incorporate that in my practice. And a lot of patients, they will say, oh, I'm just not creative, I'm not an artist. And I think we're intrinsically creative, the way we talk or move or cook or just express ourselves. And so finding the medium is really helpful. It could be the guitar or drums or oil paintings or acrylics, or knitting, crocheting. There's so many different ways to create. And so if the patient is inclined already, bringing that into the session, being like, oh, how's your poetry going? What are you expressing? Or what are you not expressing? Because sometimes those creative blocks can happen, or the fear of facing a blank canvas or a blank, song chorus. And so really addressing what's getting in the way of creativity. And then if they're spiritually inclined, I really like to bring in the idea that we are spiritual beings living human experiences, and we're conduits for this healing, this manifestation, this creativity that we get to express. And so how can we get into that flow? How can we be instruments for that creativity?
Yeah, I love that. For me, I know just personally, my experience for a lot of my life, like the first half of my life, I was very much an artist. I went to art school. I only went for a year. Not a lot of that was due because I was so lonely there without my friends. And so I transferred schools and went to a school with my peers that I had been going to school with for so long. But I used art as a form, I think, of escape for me, to escape from the trauma that I had been experiencing. And I found that when I stopped drawing, it was mainly drawing. I didn't really paint a lot, but it was mostly drawing with charcoal or pencil or however that was. I found that I stopped when I was 26, and I often wondered over the years what made me just give it up altogether. And I think it doesn't necessarily have to be a lifelong passion. It can change. And I think now it's changed to writing, because I do love to write. So I've changed that. I've changed my passion to other creative outlets, like having this podcast. And I think, again, people look at maybe art as being like oil painting or watercolor or crocheting something, or like that type of art when you make pottery. People look at art that way, and it could be the written word, it could be music, it could be anything that really brings us that joy. So I love that you bring that into your style of working with your clients, because I think it has definitely is therapeutic. Even just listening to music is therapeutic. So I love that you brought that up. So you've contributed to the Psychiatric Times and spoken on PTSD for the American Psychiatric Association, specifically addressing the Hispanic community because you did it in Spanish. So how do you choose the topics you address, and what impact do you hope to have or to achieve, especially when you're focusing on marginalized groups through these platforms?
Yeah. So something that's near and dear to me is spirituality and the health of our planet. And so for the Kevin MD and Psychiatric Times article, I had this idea, and it was like almost like it didn't leave me alone until I wrote it and I submitted it. And it was just really this feeling of disconnection from my true nature, and just seeing everyone just in this hustle and bustle and this race to nowhere, and this real disconnection to the health of the planet, and seeing mental health illnesses increasing as well as the destruction of the planet. And so I wanted to write something that reflected how I was feeling, and then also just bringing an awareness to it's okay to feel abnormal in an abnormal sort of situation where we are disconnected from the seasons and the weather and the phases of the moon or just nature. And so that was just a real inner calling for me to write about that. And then for the American Psychiatric Association, so my family is originally from Colombia, and my dad came from pretty extreme poverty. My mom also wasn't incredibly well off, and they came to this country for the American dream and were able to support my sister and I through college, graduate school, medical school. And it's so important to be able to give back to the community, and especially because my private practice is private pay, and I want to be able to give back to my community and presenting information that could be helpful, because there's still so much stigma and misunderstanding about mental health illnesses, and also bringing in a holistic approach, because often there's this fear of modern medicine and Western medicine, and which makes sense. There's been trauma, medical trauma, and everything. And so trying to build that bridge back of trust between patients and doctors in the medical field.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, you are with that shift to telehealth. How do you maintain a strong therapeutic connection with your patients remotely? And what maybe unique challenges and benefits have you observed in providing these types of services?
Yeah, the benefits are it's very convenient for patients to kind of just hop on to their laptop or their phone, when they're on their lunch break or a little after work. Sometimes I'll see patients when they're in their car and everything. So it's just a bit more convenient. They don't have to drive to the office, find parking or pay for parking, because then it could be like a 2-3 hour sort of experience to get to therapy or psychiatry. So there's definitely those types of benefits. I really try to just form like a really warm presence via telehealth. And sometimes I'll start the session with a small meditation just to ground, just to get present. And then I'll share, sometimes depending on the patient's interest, a poem or a book suggestion or even a prayer. The Serenity Prayer is such a good go-to sort of prayer to help folks out. And so just, yeah, forming that alliance that, hey, we're here together for your healing. And that's sort of the purpose and meaning of each session.
Yeah, so I think that would probably far outweigh any challenges that you faced when you are providing these types of services.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something special about in person. There is something special about it. And then there's something really unique and helpful for telehealth as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So let's talk about the future of Soul Psychiatry. What are your aspirations for your company in the coming years, and how do you plan to evolve your practice to meet the changing needs of your patients?
So and this is kind of going back to your previous question of I just really, my mission, my purpose is to really spread this message that psychiatry means the healing of the soul, of the spirit. And so it's so important to come back to that. And I want to be able to share that to patients and then also to the psychiatry field, that it's okay to bring in spirit or whatever that means, something larger than ourselves, to bring in awe and wonder into a session, to speak about the power of prayer and meditation, and coming back to that the health of our minds is so related to the health of our bodies, our souls, our spirits, our community, our society at large, because we have kind of derailed and we've kind of gone down that biological aspect of just medications. But it's so important to listen to our patients' stories, to really see them as a person, as a human being, and really value all the things that they've been through and their strengths and their vulnerabilities and the opportunities of growth, and to humanize medicine and our patients again and ourselves, and to bring in our own suffering and wonders and curiosities into the session. So it's not just about like providing, like, I think it's so important to provide that one-on-one care, and then like the larger picture is to really spread this message. And when it comes to one-on-one care, just being that person, that soft landing pad that people can just arrive and with their full selves, not feeling like they're going to be judged or criticized, but they can just share, what's on their mind, their heart, their spirit, and they can have that sense of comfort and ease, being in a session with me, and then having that lasting change so that they could be their own therapist or their own soul psychiatrist.
I love that. I really, I'm blown away by what you do. And I think it's beautiful. So Dr. Vélez, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your extensive knowledge and your unique but beautiful holistic approach in psychiatry. Your insights into integrating mind, body, and soul for deep healing, especially your work with young adults and professionals, has been incredibly enlightening. So, and your dedication to providing that holistic and personalized care, not just locally, but also through telehealth practice, is truly inspiring. I know that it's, of course, it makes sometimes people feel much more at ease when they don't have to go out and have to get into an environment that they're not comfortable. And it's clear to me that your work is a beacon of hope for many facing mental health challenges. So I truly appreciate you spending time speaking with me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. It's been a real pleasure.
And to our listeners, I hope that Dr. Vélez's insights inspire you to consider new dimensions of health that intertwine the physical, mental, and spiritual, and that you embrace the possibility of transformation that such integrated care can offer. I'm so grateful you joined us for this conversation today, and I hope it has sparked curiosity and opened pathways to enriched perspectives on wellness and self-care. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Dreaming of the perfect event or longing for a clutter-free space? I'm Stephanie with I'm with Steph, where your vision becomes a reality. From magical weddings to transformative home organizing, we bring you expertise and passion to every project. Whether you're planning a grand celebration or seeking peace through organization, we tailor our services to meet your unique needs. I'm with Steph. To explore our services and connect with me directly, visit imwithsteph.com. Mention Electrocast for a 20% discount.
Everyone has heard about the U.S. space program, but what is actually going on at NASA? Get the real story in 4 minutes or less with the NASA Daily podcast from Electrocast. Join astronauts and researchers as they conduct groundbreaking experiments, work on the International Space Station, and reach for the stars. NASA Daily, your cosmic update.
Electrocast. Electrocast.